Hi, everybody. I'm Eric. Today, I'm not going to talk about AI. I'm going to actually talk about legacy React Native systems and projects and how to modernize those with some real strategies that I've used in different projects. I also had a lot of fun with QR codes while I was procrastinating making these slides. So you'll see a lot of really funky QR codes. That one has a screenshot of the slide in the center of it. And if anyone could tell me if it still works, it seemed to work before. Anyway, I'm Eric. I'm an engineering leader at Cisco. That's my mom on the right there. I've worked with React Native projects for almost 10 years, shortly after it came out in 2015, from consumer startups to B2B enterprises, and many side gigs helping various companies modernize their projects or build new systems. I also co-organize the React San Francisco Bay Area meetup. So if you're ever in town, drop by. We have monthly meetups to hang out and talk about nerdy React things. And before I go any further, I just wanted to see a show of hands, like anybody who has ever interacted with tech debt or legacy systems. Okay, in the last, can we keep them up? Like in the last year, have you? The last month? The last week? The last day? Okay, like the same amount of hands for all of those time periods. So we're all in this together. I think we can all say that. You look around, we all have war stories, and I don't want to trigger any of those. I want to keep it positive here, but there's gonna kind of be like a support group, collective support group element here that we're gonna work through. So one thing that helps me, as you can tell, I kind of go on tangents a lot. So I like to set a goal for myself to keep the focus and set my intention. And my goal here for this presentation is to help at least one person here launch a refactoring project somewhere to modernize some pieces of painful legacy code. I think we can achieve it. I think it's an achievable goal, and maybe we can overshoot it. So I'm going to try to set some very practical, tangible materials for you that you can use, and some strategies that you can use. And this is how I've outlined this talk. First, we're going to set a goal. Check, we've already done that. Then we're going to go over the outline, which is what we're doing right now. So we're moving right along. We're going to level set with a reality check on like what software engineering is actually like. And then we're going to do kind of the deep dive of this talk into the fourth section there, getting serious about legacy systems, where I'll go into 6 different areas that you commonly will interact with legacy code if you're working in a React Native project that's more than a couple years old. And then maybe the most difficult section will be the 5th one there, winning management strategies. Difficult because it's working with people rather than machines. And then finish with some hope and positivity about the development of software engineering and how we're continuously making software better. That was a very confusing statement. So actually, it may seem like a lot, but it's really easy. All you have to do is RMRF, like C project, React Native and Greenfield project, and then profit. So that's my presentation. If anyone's got any questions. But I think there was a typo. So actually, instead of React Native, do npx create React Native app Greenfield project, and then you're done. Or actually, npm uninstall globally React Native CLI, and then also if you install it globally in the past, maybe just also uninstall React Native community/CLI, and then run npx React Native community CLI at latest init Greenfield project, and then we're done. Or okay, now you should just npx create expo app at latest, and then you're good. So kind of jokes aside, but I want to just point out that all of these are official ways to init a React Native project over time. So even the simplest thing of like starting a React Native project changes over time. So this kind of gives us a taste for what we're getting into here. So what's software engineering actually like? So ideally, we like to think of software engineering, the thing that like I always feel like very passionate about and feel very excited about is like greenfield projects, working with the latest tech stack, everything that all the thought leaders on Twitter are telling you to do, or whatever the platform we're supposed to look at now. You have amazing tooling that always works for you, never against you. You have simple, easy to understand data models. Everything in your app is sensible, makes sense, and it's just like the solo side projects that you work on. But the reality is that you're gonna deal with legacy pains. You're gonna have multiple overlapping systems that need to communicate to each other, but refuse to go to couples therapy to work out their differences. You're gonna have broken windows all over the place that people just have normalized, like, oh yeah, that's a janky thing, but yeah, that's what it is. You're gonna have other priorities that are gonna distract you from modernizing your code. You're gonna have other people that, and with other people, you're gonna have lots and lots of opinions, and they might be different than yours. And then you're gonna have natural biases to inaction, keeping the status quo. Hey man, like, it's always just worked this way. And then tech debt and tech debt and tech debt. So we are all in this together, and you are going to be dealing with tech debt, and it's going to suck. And you might even start questioning reality. Like, how is everyone okay with like this current state? But I want to just give you some calming words here. There is hope, and there are always ways that we can make our own reality better. So let's dive into getting serious about that legacy code. What are we likely to encounter with React Native legacy projects, and how can we make things better for ourselves? So the 6 areas that I'm gonna touch on here are first starting off with old React Native and kind of illustrating how the fundamentals do change. And then not a spicy topic at all for the second one there, which state management library is the best, and by extension, which are not the best. The third section, that was a joke, but the third one there is type JavaScript moving. I'm gonna talk about JavaScript to TypeScript. There's also flow. Then jump into something that doesn't seem super obvious, but I think is really important, is a repo architecture. Talking about monoliths, micro architectures, and monorepos. And talking about what the heck is a monolith versus monorepo. And then talking about design systems, except that's already legacy in this presentation as of yesterday, because you should just watch Raphael and Kyle's talk from Hinge Health on design systems. And then testing, which is only gonna be one slide because no one likes to talk about testing, but it is very important. All right, so Gant gave us a great history lesson at the keynote. And it's kind of hard to believe that React Native is turning 10 next year. It's pretty huge. It's both a testament to like how powerful it is as an architecture, and how great it is to work with. But it also means that there's a lot of legacy code out there because things have changed a lot. So it has this interesting characteristic where React Native can simultaneously be hyper modern and tediously legacy, depending on the project and the implementations you're working with. So we're gonna dive into some React Native specifics, but first, I haven't had any memes, so I'm gonna have a meme now. So when a React web dev complains to a React Native dev about navigation, the first thing I thought about when just thinking about like the history of React Native and legacy is navigation. But there are a few other things that come to mind. Animations. Just a huge shout out to Software Mansion. I know they're here. They have a booth. Huge shout out for Reanimated. Game changer. And it's not going to all be shout outs to Software Mansion, but there's another one, which is React Native Gesture Handler, which also changed the game for gestures. If you're not using both of these libraries already, and you have animations and gestures in your app, especially if they are gestures that trigger animations back and forth, definitely use these. And if you were on the right side of the navigation library wars and you're using React Navigation, then you already have these in your project. And then using native dependencies, that's changed a bunch. And then someone said somewhere that Android's also a mobile platform, I think. But to really understand like the kinds of things that you'll interact with in legacy React Native projects, we need to go deeper. We need to go to the React level as well. So some of you may remember like lifecycle methods versus hooks, or like the class components versus function components, higher order components, render props, mixins, if anyone's like a boomer out here. And then even class to class. Does anybody remember like refactoring class to class components? Know what I'm talking about? Like, Like the React create class? Yeah. Okay, we got, there are not dozens of us. There's some of us. But yeah, this was like before we were using like JavaScript classes, we were using like the React create class. And this is actually a screenshot I took from the literally legacy React docs at legacy.reactjs.org. And that brings us to the next thing. We need to go deeper. We need to go to the language level here. And doing this part, doing this slide like blew my mind because I had forgotten like all this stuff didn't exist at the beginning. Like ES6 didn't exist. Like that is the spec of JavaScript ECMA 2015. We got like classes like I was referring to in the slides before. We got imports, async, like promises generators, async await, array methods, which like blows my mind. Like we just take all these things for granted now. And then like lots of nice developer experience stuff like arrow functions, destructuring, spread, rest, and the list goes on. So I think no one would argue that like they don't want these things. So another way to say that is like change is good. Like we are making things better at the language level, at the library level, and change is inevitable. It's only been 9 years with React Native and so much has changed. So a takeaway here is bet on change. Bet on change and always build for change. So I'm going to use a template that's going to be reused across these different topics of how can you pitch these kinds of things generally. Like there are going to be very specific things to your project, but most generally when you're talking about like language or framework level like refactorings, just follow the best practices that are out there, research those, and then make it easy and brief to understand. Start by like as you're in there, like don't create a whole new project to go move to arrow functions or something. Just start using arrow functions. Make sure that everyone's like on your team. I don't think you're gonna have people that are gonna be like, no arrow functions. But make sure everyone's on the same page and just start doing it as you're doing new work. These kinds of things aren't really controversial, right? The new language spec comes out, you can use those features, right? And then use tooling. Make sure to make the tooling friendly, not feel like it's like a friction point for people on your team, and make it helpful. For instance, like linters that'll tell you something is up, like as you're writing in your IDE. Sometimes jank days can help, like just bring everybody together and then measure and report those things. All right. So the least controversial one here, we're going to talk about state management and which one's the best. Except I don't have enough time to go into state management during this talk. So I'll just leave with this kind of general takeaways here. When it comes to state management, I really liked what Summer was saying yesterday in her talk of picking one library for each concern. So what you really want to do here is document where, when, what, how, and why do you want to use different kinds of state management solutions, like local component state or props or like a global state in your application, or server cache like React Query, or you want to just use the backend as a state management solution. Like all those are legitimate for different things, and you just want to be clear about what they are and pick one solution for each thing, and then do kind of like an audit of how you are currently managing states. So analyze the state of your state management to put it in confusing words. And then the thing that works best, I think, here is to consolidate your state management. So if you have like many different things, I worked in some projects that I've come into that had many different state management solutions for the same problems. And it was better in most of those cases to just start iterating and making sure that the thing that I'm 100% confident is the pattern that we want to use is actually a good pattern after like actually trying it out. So definitely try to iterate there. Again, like I'm building a new feature, let me build it in this new way. Sometimes though, all at once is the thing to do, especially if you're coming into like a project that hasn't been touched in like many years. Maybe you just want to like one fell swoop it. Always focus on the dev experience as you're doing all this. Like you can never go wrong if that's your focus. And use linters and minimize boilerplate as much as possible. Like if you make your new patterns or new solutions just the best and easiest to use, like you're not gonna have a problem like convincing people. They're just gonna use it. So moving on to typed JavaScript. The biggest takeaway here is that tsconfig.json is your friend if you're migrating to TypeScript, and you can do incremental changes to your tsconfig. I'll kind of demonstrate one of those that will really help you guarantee a migration to TypeScript rather than like whack-a-mole kind of getting there. And think of types as not just for the type safety of your system, but also for the developer experience. Think of like how beneficial they are when you're typing in VS Code, for instance, and you get your autocompletes. And think of the types for your app boundaries. And then also, it's really great actually doing a talk the second day because you get so much cool stuff you could just reference from the day before. Neil's talk yesterday on optimizing with static Hermes, if you're not convinced that TypeScript or types in general are not useful, then you don't want to do performant ray tracing in your app. So, all right. I was having some more fun with QR codes. That's a QR code inside of a QR code, and both are valid QR codes, apparently. I don't really understand QR codes yet. But so with TSifying your JS project, I'm talking here about like a very large, like hundreds or thousands of JavaScript files. You're not going to be able to do that in like one fell swoop. So you're going to want to probably start with your most important, like critical business types, like the data models that matter the most, the data types that matter the most for your application. And then not really a trick, but like a useful strategy here is to immediately set no implicit any to true in your TS config. This may be slightly controversial because people may disagree and say that you should never just explicitly type something as any if it's not intentional. But what this really helps is to kind of stop the bleeding and make sure that everything going forward is TypeScript, and you can convert everything, all your files basically, to TypeScript in one fell swoop. And just to demo it, I'm going to try to do this. It's the world's simplest demo, which means that I just jinxed myself. So in that QR code that'll be back up on the screen in a second, there's a little repo on GitHub. I need to push up some local changes, but this is up there at least. Here's just a very trivial example of an implicitly typed any. It's a function to add two things that are any's and return those. If you haven't used code mods before, they were referenced in a talk yesterday. Super valuable. We have just like a small one here. Please don't trust it because I just wrote it for this talk and there's probably edge cases I'm not covering. But what this will do is it'll traverse your folders and find all the TypeScript files, and then find any that in the AST, the abstract syntax tree, the representation of all those nodes. Find any that have implicit any's, and then just add an explicit any to them. So to show this in action, I'm just going to run this. So I'm using JS code shift. I'm going to use the script that it's called add explicit any.js, and then I'm going to apply it to the example TS file that we have here, and we should see it just do it live. And it didn't do it live. Let's try it like this. Hey, there we go. I had to save the file. So there, did everyone see that happen? Yeah, okay. So you could do this, and now you have everything explicitly any'd, and all the type purists that you're friends with will hate you. But what that will help you do is then you can immediately add the no implicit any, and then you can never have an additional implicit any added. You will need to add like a TS ignore. But yeah. The other thing I would add here is that in my experience, like a lot of us have used prop types, and if you're in a legacy JS React Native project, you probably see these. But in my experience, it's better to just like ignore them and not try to just mass convert them. And yeah, how do you pitch this? This I'm going to kind of move to defining value as an important thing here. because this is a significantly large project that especially folks in management may not immediately understand the value of. So you can catch bugs at dev time rather than in production at runtime. You have documentation at your fingertips that can increase velocity. And as we saw with the static Hermes, in the future, we'll be able to have much more performant apps. Start with a game plan, go for small wins, and get to that last mile with momentum. And use tools to enforce things like the TS config and incrementally make that stricter. Have type jank days, especially focusing on like the core business types, and measure everything and celebrate all the wins. I'm gonna try to go quickly here through repo architecture, and maybe wondering like why this is in here. I think it's one of the biggest changes happening right now in the community, especially in JavaScript land. So we've had monoliths and left them alone for a very long time, just projects that become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you have kind of very difficult to grok, very difficult to understand connections between everything that's going on in those applications. And so we kind of thought splitting those up into like microservices, micro apps was like the way to go. And then at scale, those can turn out to be very chaotic and inefficient, and you kind of don't understand what the connections are between different services or libraries talking to each other there. So the biggest thing in the monorepo community, I think right now is NX. And I'm not going to do a deep dive on this, but basically NX is able to generate a dependency graph of your entire repo, your entire project, and understand what the relationships are between the different applications, the different libraries. Maybe you have like a design system, for instance, you can have that as its own library, still within the same project. And what this allows you to do is get magical efficiencies, like being able to pass an affected flag. So if you're wanting to run tests, you made like a small change somewhere, you don't have to run the entire suite of tests. You will just run the things that could possibly be affected. So it's really, really magical. The more you kind of go into this and embrace it, the more you get out of it. You also get things like being able to analyze the workspace, being able to do really smart scaffolding like code generators because it knows your project structure. So you're like, oh, I want to do a new feature. I don't want to write any boilerplate. No problem. We'll generate all the boilerplate for you, and you can just start working on your business logic. So pitch it. Probably don't say godly visibility, but that's what I would say. The value of like infrastructure, especially if you have a very, very large project, like you can cut down orders of magnitude for test suites. If you want to go the extra mile, distributed caching is really magical, but really just read the docs. You can start off by moving everything into a deprecated folder and then start splitting things out like your libraries and your applications into different NX projects within that. Follow best practices, measure improvements, and use tools like code owners to make sure that the right people are seeing the right changes. Design systems, this is deprecated. Go watch this talk from yesterday from Raphael and Kyle. Useful testing, like I literally just like deleted a bunch of slides, it was great. The useful testing, I got one slide here. Why it helps us change any feature we can refactor however we want if it's well tested. Which also means at scale that we can do radical changes across an entire project if we trust that it's well tested. And then when you have those inevitable edge cases that come up and cause like an outage, those get, someone writes a test, and then that's embedded expertise that we have. So very valuable, but there are a lot of problems with tests. First thing you should do is audit your real coverage. So you may have 100% code coverage for like a React Native component because it renders. But that's not real coverage, so you want to kind of audit and like understand, can we trust these numbers? Audit the tools and libraries that you currently use. Are they still useful? Are they overlapping? Have patterns changed or tools changed? And then identify the critical paths. If you have kind of a dumpster fire situation with your tests that you don't trust them, kind of start over from the most critical paths for your application. And really focus on making it easy for anybody to write tests. Focus on making it clear how to write them. Focus on making them genuinely useful in the development process, not just, oh, it's a thing I've got to do. And make sure to make it trustworthy. All right, last section here, winning management strategies. So just going to another reality check. We can often forget this when we're looking at like awesome tools and hating on tech debt. But when executed, we have to remember that professionally written software is actually meant to do something valuable for someone somewhere. So you're going to need to focus on the business value of what you're working on. I've got a long list in that repo of things that you can kind of reach for as like general things that may be applicable to any given kind of modernization project. But a big one is like velocity. Like if we do this, is it an investment that will mean we can go faster in the future? What happens if we don't do something? What happens if we don't update our testing practices? What happens with when someone wants to make a small change? How many lines of code do they actually have to change to do something that should be pretty simple? That's a code churn metric. Is the application sluggish? Maybe we need to upgrade our systems and libraries there. Do surveys, like understand if the developers on your team are frustrated as well. That's a great data point for you to make a pitch. And then even with recruiting, will like people be generally excited to work in the tech stack that we currently have? If not, what could we do to make that better? And then stand on the shoulder of giants by using industry standards like DORA. Definitely go check this out if you're not familiar with these already. But this is like they call it the 4 key metrics to assess the performance of a software development team. Definitely rely on the industry standards, compare to others in the industry, but then also customize to your specific use cases. For me personally, I really like custom metrics around code review and custom metrics about code complexity. And then always set reasonable expectations, never oversell. Keep it always matter of fact. There are no miracles and especially no heroes. Make sure you're doing this as a team and not stressing yourself out. Measure, 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 and report the wins as much as possible. Start small with the things that will have the highest return on investment. Keep it up as a regular habit because this is a marathon, not a sprint. And then find allies who else will help you. So I'll leave with some positive words here, referencing back to what I was saying before, that change is good, change is inevitable, bet on change. Our industry evolves at a rapid pace. Amazing people everywhere are relentlessly making building software better. That's a great thing. And to all you brave adventurers pushing the frontiers of better software engineering, you lift us all up. Please keep building for change. Please keep building tech wealth instead of tech debt. Thank you. My name's Erik. Bye.